October 1944 arrived quietly in Iowa, but the quiet carried weight. The fields around Camp Alona had already been stripped bare by harvest, leaving behind rows of broken corn stalks that rattled softly in the wind like dry bones. The sky that morning was a dull, endless gray, the kind that pressed down on the land and made everything feel smaller. At dawn, a train whistle rose across the flat countryside, long and low, a sound that seemed to carry sorrow with it as much as steam. The locomotive slowed as it approached the auxiliary platform that had been hastily constructed for a purpose no one at the camp had ever witnessed before. Steam hissed and curled upward, mixing with the cold air. Metal wheels screamed briefly against the rails before settling into silence. Margaret Sullivan stood at her office window and watched it all unfold, her hands folded tightly in front of her, her posture rigid as if holding herself together required effort. Pinned to her coat was a small gold star. It caught the dim light whenever she moved, a quiet symbol of loss that never stopped aching. 3 months had passed since the telegram arrived telling her that her son Tommy had been killed in France. 3 months, and the words still felt unreal. She had thrown herself into work since then, into rules and regulations and preparation, because order was easier to manage than grief. The train cars stretched out before her like a steel serpent. Olive drab paint chipped and scarred from travel. Inside those cars waited something unprecedented in American military history. 12 German women. Prisoners of war. Margaret had spent weeks studying files, memorizing names and backgrounds, reviewing the Geneva Convention until the words blurred together. America would not fail this test. Even in war, dignity would be preserved. At least, that was the hope. When the first door slid open, the sound was harsh, metal scraping metal. A woman stepped down carefully onto the platform. Her uniform was wrinkled but tidy, worn thin in places. She stood straight despite the cold, despite the journey. Her movements were calm, measured, the kind that came from a lifetime of responsibility. This was Greta Hoffmann, former schoolteacher, 28 years old. From Hamburg. Margaret recognized her immediately. Greta scanned her surroundings quickly, taking in the guards, the buildings, the open space. Her eyes searched for violence and found none. Behind her, the other women emerged one by one. Young faces. Tired faces. Some barely more than girls. They clutched small bundles of belongings allowed by their captors. Others held nothing at all, their hands empty, fingers curled tightly as if still gripping something that had already been taken from them. They instinctively gathered around Greta, forming a small island of familiarity in a foreign land. American guards stood nearby, rifles held but pointed downward. Their expressions were neutral, disciplined. Sergeant Riley stepped forward with a clipboard, his voice carrying authority tempered with unexpected courtesy. "Welcome to Camp Alona," he said. "You'll be processed according to international law. No mistreatment. Follow instructions, and we'll get along fine." Greta stepped forward. "We understand," she replied in careful English. "We will comply." Her accent carried the sound of classrooms and lessons, of chalk dust and quiet authority. It sounded like a life that belonged to another world entirely. Processing took hours. Names recorded. Papers stamped. Medical examinations conducted with professional efficiency. Photographs taken for identification cards. Margaret observed from a distance, noting the quiet dignity the women maintained. There were no outbursts, no tears, no defiance. Only a cautious relief that reality did not match the horrors they had been warned about. By noon, they were led to their quarters. Clean barracks. Proper beds. Real blankets. Nothing luxurious, but nothing cruel. Then came the mess hall. The smell of vegetable soup drifted through the room, plain but comforting. Long wooden tables stretched across the space, scrubbed clean. Tin plates and cups waited neatly at each place. Sam Washington moved behind the counter with the ease of a man who knew his work mattered. His white apron was spotless, his hands steady as he ladled soup, making sure every bowl was full. Sam had grown up knowing hunger. He cooked the way some people prayed, with care and intention. That morning, he had decided to do something extra. Something human. He placed golden squares of cornbread on each plate. Still warm. Butter melting slowly across the surface. To Sam, cornbread was more than food. It was survival. It was history. It was what kept families alive when there was nothing else. The women stared. One whispered to another. Fingers poked at the unfamiliar yellow surface. Greta picked up a piece and examined it, brow furrowed. She broke it apart, watching it crumble. Then she laughed. "It's not even bread," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The laughter spread. Nervous, relieved, genuine laughter. The first moment of lightness since their capture. But in the kitchen doorway, Sam froze. The sound struck him like a slap. His jaw tightened. His hands stilled. The guards stiffened, expressions hardening. What had been meant as welcome now felt like mockery. The next day, cornbread vanished from the menu. White bread replaced it. Wrapped. Tasteless. Official. The warmth disappeared with it. Sam cooked without emotion. The guard spoke only when necessary. Greta replayed the moment in her mind every night, her mother's voice echoing through memory, reminding her that gratitude was a duty, especially when food was offered. Margaret saw the shift immediately. She felt it in the air. One afternoon, she asked Sam about cornbread, about its history, about why it mattered. He told her about slavery, about cornmeal stretched thin, about survival. Shame settled heavy in Greta's chest. Weeks passed. English lessons began. Card games followed. Laughter returned, cautiously. Then Liesl collapsed with fever. Sam brought cornbread soaked in warm milk and honey to the infirmary, a remedy passed down through generations. Liesl ate slowly, her eyes softening. "It tastes like hope," she whispered. Grief came soon after. Sam's son was listed missing in action. Greta received word that her sister was gone in Hamburg's rubble. Loss erased borders. When the blizzard struck, guards and prisoners huddled together for warmth. Blankets were shared. Coffee passed from hand to hand. Someone began to hum. Silent night. Voices joined, rising above the storm. When the song faded, Greta stood. "Teach me to make bread," she said. And in that small kitchen, as snow battered the walls, two people who had lost everything turned cornmeal into something warm, something honest, something that tasted like understanding.